Hey, it's Jeff Zito, and thank you for checking out another episode of the Celebrity Jobber Podcast. Basically taking a look at celebrities before they were famous. What did they do for work? Was there a big break that launched them into stardom? Or was it just a gradual build? What was their first job? And maybe their parents' jobs. My guest this week has been in a ton of movies, which I am a fan of. A lot of them. I just saw this crazy one not too long ago called The Menu. He's also been in the movie The Chef with Jon Favreau. He was on a great series a few years ago called Waco, about the David Koresh and Waco thing. He was really great in that. Luigi in Super Mario Brothers, Benny Blanco in Carlito's Way, and so many others. And we'll talk about his latest gig as he travels the country in search of Latino communities in places you don't necessarily think there would be Latino communities. His name is John Leguizamo, and he's my guest this week on Celebrity Jobber.
The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, give a 5-star rating, and leave a review. Check out all our past episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you pod. What if these celebrities weren't famous? What would they have become? What was their first job? We're about to find out.
Johnny, how are you, man?
I'm doing great now that I'm talking to you.
Oh, it's been a long time. I know you don't remember, but I do fondly. And I'm going to just tell you, you called me rock. You called me rock and roll's Oprah Winfrey many years ago, and I've never forgotten it. And I've told that story many times.
Cool.
But look. You know what's funny is I guess I'm a pretty big fan of your work because I see so much of your work, and it seems like you're working a lot lately. I mean, and I know when I say lately, I'm talking about Waco, which I know was like 7 or 8 years ago. But like Waco, The Menu was one of the shows that I just saw you in not too long ago. Have you been working like a lot in the last 5-10 years?
Yeah, who would have thought at my age I'd be working like an animal, but I am. We're working on Ice Age 6 right now. I'm in Zootopia. I'm in the new Deadpool VR game. This incredible little short movie independent film called Bob Trevino Likes It. Won 23 film festival awards around the world, and it's an amazing. And that came out in March.
Yeah, man. So are you doing all this on purpose? Are you going out and or is your phone just ringing? Are you auditioning for stuff, or is your phone just ringing because you're John Leguizamo?
The phone is ringing. I'm not going to lie. Yeah, it's coming to me. But I earned it. I worked my ass off for so many decades. I'm on my 4th decade in showbiz. I mean, you would hope that you would reap what you sowed. Right.
Well, no, and I want to talk a lot about your most recent project, which is called John Leguizamo Does America, and that is going on right now on MSNBC. But if you don't mind, John, can you tell me a little bit about growing up? Because you moved to New York City when you were a young guy, and I understand your father had aspirations to be in film. Is that true?
Yeah. I came to the U.S. when I was 3 years old, a little under, and my brother was 1. And we moved to Jackson Heights, Queens, where all the Colombians were moving to. And we started white flight. That's white people leaving the hell out of the neighborhood. But they were missing out, unfortunately. And my dad, when he was 19, he fancied himself to be a film director to Italy, to Cinecittà, where neorealism was birthed. Fellini, Rossellini, all the Enis. All the great neorealists of the era. And that it never came to fruition in him. But, here I am directing, producing, and voicing. I fulfilled his dream that he wasn't able to do.
That's cool. Was there ever, was he an inspiration? Like, how did this all happen? Like, how did you get involved, or how did you get interested in either stand-up, acting, theater? How did you get interested in all that stuff? And how old were you?
I was a cut up, I was always the class clown. I was the neighborhood funny guy. But I was, I was a little bit, that was of a problem child. I was a troubled kid. And my math teacher Zuffa, rest in peace, said, instead of Mr. Leguizamo, instead of just being disruptive, why don't you become a comedian? Because look, if they can make penicillin out of moldy bread, I'm sure we can make something out of you. And he actually inspired me. And I went and I looked in the pages. That's the old people's Google.
Right.
And I found Sylvia Lee Showcase Theater. And I went there at 17, and I fell in love with acting. And then I never stopped acting. I studied with some of the great acting teachers in America: Lee Strasberg, Herbert Berghoff, Wynn Hanman, National Treasure. And then I got a really good skill set.
So that all clicked for you, like late in your teens, where your teacher said you should be a comedian, and that's when your focus kind of started, like high school?
Yeah, I mean, my first scene was Dino, about a troubled kid from the hood who's in therapy, and it was like, oh my God, that's my life.
Right.
And I killed in it. I got all these offers from NYU students, their films, and I knew I had something. I knew I had there's something clicked really, really hard for me, and I knew that this would be my path, was my calling, and then the rest fell in place.
Celebrity Jobber. The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito.
What did your mom and dad do for work when you were growing up? I know Dad aspired to be, in film, but like what were their jobs when you were living in New York?
Well, obviously when they first got here, the jobs were, I was a cab driver. My mom was a factory worker, and they worked their butts off. My mom eventually became a secretary, and then my dad got into real estate, and then they both went to college, and they both became accountants. And my mom was my accountant and still is, for that almost 40 years.
That's awesome. So was there ever a time that, you looked at all the acting stuff, the stand up, the theater, and you were like, okay, this is a good dream. Did mom or dad ever say to you like, hey, John, that's cool to have a dream, but maybe you want to, get into the family business of accounting? Or did they ever have that, like, that talk with you? Backup plan?
Well, it was a little harsher than that. My father was like, we didn't come to this country for you to everything up. I wanted to be an actor. He goes, who's going to, there are no Latinos actors out there. And he was right. I mean, the only person out there at the time was Desi Arnaz, I Love Lucy. There wasn't really much opportunity. I wasn't really chasing fame or money or any of that stuff. I just loved the craft. And I never expected living off of it. And well, look, here I am.
Yeah. How about your first job? Do you remember your very first job, both in show business and in life, regular job? You ever hold a regular job?
Oh, yeah. I had a lot of jobs. I worked at a lumber yard. I was a bus boy. I worked in shoe stores, in clothing stores. In windows, I mowed lawns. I did everything and anything. I was a messenger for a minute. But my first big gig was Miami Vice.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I was about 19 or 20, and I was the villain. I looked like a child. I look like a child with a machine gun.
Yeah, almost like Chi-Chi, Man, I got to tell you, what about, like, was there something, did you have gradual success? Like, you worked at it for so long, you had gradual success, or was there a big break? Was there a moment, a phone call, something like, the big break, the pie in the sky dream phone call that changes your life? Was there anything like that in your life?
I mean, that doesn't really happen like that. I mean, well, it didn't happen like that for me because it was difficult, there was a thing called the Ross Report that came out when I was a young man in my 20s trying to be an actor, and it came out Mondays, and it would tell you all the roles available in television. And it was like Jim Crow, man. In the 80s, it would say white actor, white doctor, white lawyer, white lover, drug dealer. And I would ask my agent, let them see me. Let me do my monologue for them. I know I'll convince them, but they wouldn't see you. So basically, what I started to do was to write my own shows because I knew we're 20% of the U.S. population now, but we were a huge percent of the population then, and just not getting any play, which is crazy. So I wrote my own one-man shows because I knew the Latin population was massive, and I did Mambo Mouth, and boom, I got a great review in the New York Times. And then in my theater, I had Raul Julia, Al Pacino, John F. Kennedy Jr., rest in peace, Olympia Dukakis, George Plimpton, you name it. Arthur Miller came to my show, bro.
Wow. So,
yeah.
I mean,
Sam Shepard.
Unbelievable. Yeah, and I remember the Pest, I remember the Freak, I grew up in New Jersey, so I remember when you did some of those, the one-man shows earlier in your career, that was earlier in your career to me. But like, I'm just thinking all of these different art forms, right? They're all different. Acting, theater, one-man show, writing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Stand up. What's your favorite? And like, was there ever a time that you had to choose to do one versus the other? And what's your favorite one?
No, I've never had to choose. And luckily, I'm versatile. I think because I'm a Latin actor, I had to become versatile. Just like J-Lo, when she was starting out, she's the first to like be selling perfumes, dancing, singing. You got to do it all to survive as a Latin entertainer. But you end up pioneering so many things, but I mean, I loved voicing. It's one of my favorite things. I mean, I did Bruno Canto, and it became one of the biggest hits in Disney history. So that's a blast because you get to create a character voice and you give it life. Otherwise, it's dead on the page. But I think one of the most exciting things for me is theater, live theater, because there's nothing like it. I mean, film, you have a great connection, but it's not immediate. You don't feel like, I don't know, theater feels like religion to me. It feels like the response from the audience and the communication, and it becomes a memory and experience that's unforgettable.
The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. Celebrity Jobber.
My very first job was working at a dinner theater. I learned so much. I wonder if I ever, should have just raised my hand and be like the understudy of somebody, if my life would have become different, because I knew every damn word in The Sound of Music. I knew every line from everybody. I wonder, maybe I should have grew a pair. That was my first. That was my first job. You told me about all those different regular jobs that you had. What was your very first job, John?
My very first job was, typical newspaper route thing, and also I gave out, while I was doing the paper route, I gave out business flyers, because that's how they did it back in the 70s, business flyers. You put them on the people's doors and I'd get a couple bucks.
So that was your very first job, and now your most recent job is a show, a docuseries on MSNBC. It's called John Leguizamo Does America, and it's kind of funny because it sounds similar to an old movie that you and I might be aware of back from the 70s. But
that's what it's supposed to be.
But
Debbie does, and I'm doing America.
But you keep your clothes on, and you are in search.
Oh, thank God.
You are in search of Latino communities in America. Tell me a little bit about the show.
Yeah, the show is kind of like an antidote to all the sad imagery that we're seeing right now on TikTok and the gram and on social media of mass deportations and the horrors and cruelty of that. Here I'm going across America looking for Latin excellence, Latin brilliance, Latin genius, and I celebrate it because it's not being celebrated as much as it should. And I go to Philadelphia this time, Raleigh, who knew there were Latinos there, but there's a ton of them, New Orleans, San Antonio, Phoenix, and season was #1 original show on MSNBC, and that's why I got a second season.
And you're finding communities? Are you diving into the communities to find food, or are you just doing a deep dive on the entire area itself?
Well, it's a combination of all that. We're going to great cities where there's a lot of history. Like Philadelphia, for example, we found out that 10,000 unknown Latino patriots fought in the American Revolution, and that Juan de Miralles, a Cuban brother, raised $2 million for George Washington from Cuba, Mexico, and Spain to help fund the American Revolution. And General Bernardo Galvez formed an army of 3,000 Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Mexicans, Native Americans, and freed slaves, and they kicked the British out of the South so they couldn't surround the New England Patriots.
Wow.
The revolution, not the football team.
Right. Are you trying, is there a specific purpose? And you did mention that, you weren't happy with, currently what you're seeing on social media today. But, is that your purpose for the show? You're trying to highlight you're trying to highlight some communities where there's a lot of Latinos, or are you trying to highlight communities where people didn't think there were a lot of Latinos? Just like you said, Raleigh, North Carolina, you wouldn't think there was Latinos in Raleigh, North Carolina. What we're trying to bring attention to?
I wanted to celebrate Latino exceptionalism. So yeah, we're going to all these cities. Last time I went to Miami, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, obviously the largest Latino populations in the country. And now I went to some other cities like Raleigh. Who would have known,
Right.
They brought a ton of Latinos. They brought them there in the 70s to do all the food processing. And of course, if you bring a community there, they're going to stay. They go and they're doing amazing things there, incredible things. We met this renowned journalist from D.C. who gave up his career to help the children of immigrants that came in the 70s and who are being, obviously because they're Latino. But he made a soccer team with them, and they're the champions of North Carolina, state champions.
That's
like
cool.
2 times in a row, 3 times in a row.
That's awesome. I recently saw a movie about a group of kids in Texas where, a guy, it was a similar kind of story.
The long game.
The golf.
It was number 1 on Netflix.
That was such a great movie. I loved watching every bit of that.
Celebrity Jobber. The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito.
John, I got to tell you it seems like, you're a regular guy, right? So it seems like you're pretty outgoing, pretty fun outside of all this stuff. What are you doing with your family? What are you doing to unwind? What does John Leguizamo do when he's not working all the time, which it seems like you do?
I'm a bit of a workaholic. That's how the immigrants roll. But I definitely get, I need, for my mental health, I got to relax. So I like to travel around the world. My wife and I were just in Sicily, and I was in with my daughter. And I love tennis. Tennis is my new obsession.
I like that you said tennis, and you're not making the switch to pickleball, which seems like what the cool people are doing.
Oh, I'm not that old. Pickleball's for old folk.
That's what I like to hear. Okay,
but the new sport that I'm loving is padel. This Mexican guy invented this new game, padel, that's the rage with young people. It's
what is it?
It's a mixture of paddleball, pickleball, and tennis, and you hit it around 4 plexiglass walls. It's more for young folk because it's such a fast-moving ball. But I'm trying to keep up with the kids.
Have you ever heard of Highline? Do you remember that sport? It was like kind of big in Tampa.
Yeah.
You used to bet on
Native American game.
Yeah, you used to bet on those guys. It was pretty awesome. What about your?
I remember. Yeah, have them on Sundays.
I know. I used to love that stuff. What about your brother? Are you from a big family, John? Big brothers, a lot of brothers and sisters. And what do they do for work? Anybody else in show business?
Yeah. My sister is a producer. My sister is an actress. My brother is a masseur. I got a lot of family in different fields.
Awesome, man. Well, look, I really appreciate your time. I know it's valuable. And John Leguizamo Does America. That's on MSNBC. What day and time, John?
Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern.
And this
on
is
MSNBC.
And this is season number 2 of John Leguizamo Does America.
Number 1 on Peacock.
Awesome, man.
Season 1 on Peacock.
Hey,
thank you.
You just so happen to be on the number 1 music interview podcast in America. I don't know if you sing or dance, but any musical ability in your life?
I play Spotify real well.
John Leguizamo, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Much love, man. Peace out.
Yeah, I really like this guy's story. John Leguizamo came from Colombia when he was a little kid, and his mother and father, when they first got to the States, his mom worked in the factory, his dad drove a cab. They ultimately ended up going to college, getting an education. They both became accountants. John's mother is still his accountant to this day. I think that's a pretty incredible story of an immigrant coming to this country, doing what they have to do to survive in the beginning, but then getting educated, going to college, getting their degree, becoming an accountant. I really think that's a great story, and probably a reason John Leguizamo, became relentless in his desire to be in show business. I do remember growing up in New Jersey, and he did these one-man shows. I do remember these vaguely. I think it was Mambo Mouth that John said, more or less, his big break. He said playwright Arthur Miller came to the show. Al Pacino, John Kennedy Jr. I mean, I thought that was pretty incredible and, more or less kind of put him on the map, his one-man shows. He loves the art of theater, is what he said, his favorite medium of, showbiz world as, he's a stand-up, he's an actor, a playwright. A lot of brothers and sisters, and some of them are in show business as well, which I didn't know. First job, just like a lot of guys, paper route. But he had a lot of jobs. John said he worked in a lumber yard. He was a bus boy. He did a whole bunch of stuff. But his first acting gig was a 19-year-old Latino with a machine gun on Miami Vice. I thought that was pretty cool, and I do remember him being in that. Not when it actually happened, but seeing it in the reruns years later. And his latest job, John Leguizamo Does America. He tours different Latino communities like Raleigh, North Carolina, San Antonio, Texas, Phoenix. Actually, I think this week's episode happens to be in Phoenix. That's 9 p.m. Sunday night, MSNBC. Really cool guy. John Leguizamo. And thank you so much for checking out another episode of the Celebrity Jobber Podcast, streaming on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can follow on Instagram, celebrity_jobber_podcast, or youtube.com/the@celebrityjobber. Please subscribe. Would love a 5-star rating, and please leave a review. Past guests and episodes are online at celebrityjobber.com. And a great episode next week with psychic medium John Edward. It's going to be a really good one. Thanks again for checking out another episode of the Celebrity Jobber Podcast. Until next week, I'll see you then. I'm Jeff Zito.